Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciated the opportunity when Fred emailed me and said, want you to come speak to the Cartersville Lions Club and tell us why you voted for a rate increase. Boy, that just excited me to get up here, I tell you. Because he said, thanks, it's all right if I recognize you that we have known each other for a while. But even before I speak? Yeah. Okay, well anyway, Clarence and I have known each other for a long time, and we've been around the political world, and you know that there are things that you don't do in politics. It's very difficult. I learned in 20 years in the Georgia House of Representatives that there are three things, and then there's a fourth. Number one, you don't have legislation that affects people's children, their pets, or their automobiles. Those are kind of a no-no thing. And then also in the political world, you are careful when you affect people's pocketbook, because that's serious business. And it's serious business more today in today's environment, and it's in our economics than it is in other times. When Fred talked to me about his introduction, or Ron going to be the introducer, I said, just say, here's Bubba, and let me take you back, if I may, and it might tell you something about the man. I was 28 years old and called to my first jury duty as a grand juror, was elected foreman of the grand jury, and indicted a sheriff. Wasn't easy. Second event, I spent 2 years as a county commissioner on the board of managers of the Association of County Commissioners of Georgia. And this goes back to when we were not county commissioners then, we were commissioners of roads and revenue. And I lived on a dirt road. And before my term was up, I lived on a paved road. That was interesting. Then as a legislator, in 1972, I was one of those young rural legislators that backed a $30 million program to build a World Congress Center. Now, the state budget was bumping $2 billion at that time. My wife was a classroom school teacher making less than $6,000 a year. And here this whippersnapper from Commerce, Georgia, supporting $30 million to build a World Congress Center. Now, we didn't know what the World Congress Center was then. We hadn't seen it. But it was a vision. If you look back today, what is the World Congress Center? What has it done, and what has it meant to the state of Georgia? It has been an economic engine for this state that has forced us forward in many, many areas. Then, as a legislator, I lived in a county that it wasn't safe to abandon your car in your own driveway and go in the house. We had chicken houses that were not assembly lines like at Doraville where they put cars together. We had a disassembly lines in chicken houses where they would take a car stolen from Athens or Atlanta, and they would run it through that chicken house in 29 minutes, and it would come out in multiple parts. I introduced legislation at that time giving the Georgia Bureau of Investigation total arrest authority in Jackson County, Georgia. Those of you that understand that, at that time, the only way that the GBI could come into your community was be invited by the sheriff or be invited by a Superior Court judge, the district attorney, to do investigations. They didn't have just arrest authority in those counties. I was opposed by then Speaker Pro Tem Thomas B. Murphy. I was opposed by the Georgia Sheriff's Association, but was successful in pleading my case with my colleagues in the General Assembly. Passed the legislation. It was a constitutional amendment, and it was voted on 6-1 by the citizens of Jackson County. And in January, after it was ratified in November, the FBI and the GBI entered in that county, cleaned it up, and for that time forward, we have been pretty much a county with respect, and I wasn't a representative from the county where they steal all the cars. those are some of the kind of issues that, and then later in the early 80s, the population of Jackson County was less than 35,000 people. We had 3 school systems. We had a school system, Commerce Independent System, Jefferson Independent System, and a county system. Had 3 of everything. I was thinking about leaving the General Assembly of Georgia. I'd been there over 10 years, and figured it was time to get back in my business and run my business. So my swan song was going to be, I was going to abolish all 3 of those school systems and create one new system. I had Governor Busby's help. I had Joe Frank Harris's assistance when Joe Frank at that time was chairman of the House Appropriations Committee. The legislation, I had my windows shot out in my business twice, the plate glass windows in my business. It wasn't the education issue. It was going to be, are we going to be tigers, leopards, or Trojans, whatever. It was the what the football team was going to be named was the issue, not the education program. Well, unfortunately, it failed. It had to pass in all 3 entities. Failed in the county system by 168 votes. Passed in the cities, Jefferson and Commerce. And unfortunately, today they still have 3 systems over there. 3 of everything, 3 superintendents, 3 everything, and it's not good for economic. You got an industry that comes in and looks at your community. They're going to look at things like that. Well, with that said, that kind of tells you a little bit about some of the issues that I have encountered in my life in the political world. I did spend those 20 years in the Georgia House of Representatives. I followed Joe Frank Harris as chairman of the Appropriations Committee for 8 years while he was governor, and really enjoyed that experience as tough as it was, and found out really that, you know, we worry about lobbyists all the time. It's in the newspapers every day about lobbyists. Government's your biggest lobby. There was not a Saturday in my business when I'd be there if it wasn't the chancellor of the university system or president of one of our colleges or commissioner of one of our state agencies that didn't want to come in and see me while I was trying to make a living to talk about their budget and their respective agency and government. It was great, a great challenge. And now, in 1998, I was at home minding my own business, and Governor Miller called me and asked me if I would accept an appointment to the Georgia Public Service Commission to fill an unexpired term. I told him no, and went on about my business. And then 3 days later, he called back, and I went to Atlanta to see him again. And Zell was very, very persistent, and he was. I had just sold my business 2 months before that in Commerce, and so I did accept that responsibility and was sworn in June of '98. And September of '98 was when gas deregulation went into effect. The General Assembly had passed deregulation in '97. The Commission had worked on it, implementation in September of '98. I wasn't in the legislature when it passed. I wasn't on the Commission when all the hearings took place, but was in that process. I told Governor Miller at the end of 1998 when he was going out of office, I said, well, Governor, I said, I found out over this September to December why you wanted me to accept that position on the Public Service Commission. He said, Bubba, what do you mean? I said, you were just getting even with me for running against you for governor in 1990. Anyway, I'm here today, and I'm going to talk to you. When I was in Toastmasters, I was taught that you don't use a lot of numbers in making a speech because it all blurs together. So I apologize in advance because I am going to put a lot of numbers in front of you as I discussed today, and I hope that they will fit as to why I'm here and the subject of which I speak. I'm going to talk to you about, first off, the original request that the Georgia Power Company made. I'll preface that by saying the only other rate case that I was involved in with Georgia Power was in 1999, and we had a stipulated agreement that we entered into after much debate and deliberation with the power company in 1999 for the next 3 years. And in that we had a $1 billion rate reduction for the consumers of Georgia. I went off the commission in '02, and in '07 there was another rate case by the Georgia Power, and there was a rate increase in 2007. I came back on the commission in 2009, and we have, of course, last year in 2010, we had another rate case, and we reached a stipulated agreement with the power company on that rate case. I'm going to talk to you about the original request that Georgia Power had. I'm going to talk to you about things that drives a rate case. And then I'm going to talk to you about the final settlement and the agreement that was between the Public Service Commission and the power company. Then I'm going to talk to you about the return on equity, the ROE. It's much discussed at many times about what that means and what that means to us as consumers. I want to talk about a minute about the CWIP program. That was the construction work in progress on our 2 nuclear reactors on Plant Vogtle 3 and 4. Then I'm going to talk about some consumer assistance programs, and then of course one of the most questions that I always get about from consumers about the Georgia Power Company is, why do they advertise? Because they are a monopoly in our state. The 2010 rate case started out with a continuation of the 2007 rate plan, which would allow it to continue to operate for multiple years, 3 or 4 years at a time. The creation of an adjustable cost recovery tariff, cost of what it costs to do business in that particular area. Creation of a new certificate capacity of cost recovery. And then a continuation and enhancement of the environmental compliances that have to be recovered on the demand side management. Implementation of an annual adjustment to the municipal franchise fees and changes to the consumer's revenues earned within those municipal boundaries of the state. In the original rate case and the traditional base tariffs in the 2011 case, that's this year, the power company asked for $451 million. In 2012, they asked for $133 million. And in 2013, a reduction of $13 million, with a total over the 3-year period of time of $571 million and a base tariff increase. In the environmental tariff, in 2011, this year, they had asked for $115 million. In 2012, $120 million, a reduction of $12 million in 13, with a total of $223 million in that environmental tariff. In the certified capacity tariff, in 12 they asked for $176 million, 13 $87 million. In the demand side management tariff, $32 million in 11, 17 million in 12, 18 million in 13, a total of $67 million. Franchise fees, which municipalities and charge the county for, the company to run the lines, use the rights of way. In 2011, 17 million, 12, 7 million, 13, 2 million, total of 26 million, which was a total of $1,150 million request. How'd that affect the typical ratepayer? It would have been $10.88 a month in 2011, $7.72 more in 2012, $1.80 more in 2013, with a total after a 3-year period of time, it would be an increase of 18% or $20.40 a month increase. That was the original request of the power company. What drives these is approximately half of this increase. Listen to me now. Half of the increase in this case was due to environmental laws and regulations. $168 million for environmental controls, scrubbers, bag houses, $242 million for McDonald units 4 and 5 and 6, replacing old coal-fired units that are mandated to be retired. That's that big smokestack you see going around 285 over there. EPA has given a deadline for that coal operation to exist. So it has to be replaced. It's being replaced with combined cycle natural gas. So almost 50% of the initial rate case is environmental laws by EPA out of Washington, some out of the state of Georgia with EPD, but which the power company has no control over, and which the Georgia Public Service Commission has no control over. That's why you have to watch very closely with what's happening in Washington today with the legislation called cap and trade. Cap and trade deals with carbon. Cap and trade, if cap and trade passed as we see it today, the snapshot of the legislation today, our power bills would be astronomical. We just couldn't stand it. We have opposed it. I've been to Washington on my own pocketbook to speak with our delegation up there last year, raising the issues that we have in there, because it would require us by having 20% of renewables in our state as far as our generation is concerned. And renewables doesn't even include in their legislation nuclear energy, which is the cleanest, the cheapest in the long run that we can participate. Georgia, we certified 2 new reactors last year, March of 2009. We'll be the first state in the nation in 15 and 16 to have 2 new nuclear plants coming on board. The remainder of that increase supports safe, reliable, cost of efficient delivery of electricity. $347 million for generation and transmission, distribution, and maintenance. $67 million for the demand side management program, and then of course $26 million again, as I talked about, franchise fees, and that mess, $28 million is security. You know, you just think about security doesn't generate 1 kilowatt of electricity, but it is mandated by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, our plants and our substations and all these areas that are vital to us requires a significant amount of security. We've talked about the cyber attacks and all of that, and it's above my pay grade, but it's still something that we have to deal with all the time. Just think this last weekend, not this last one, the weekend before last, what happened in the metropolitan area of Atlanta? That was a snowstorm. That was an ice storm. We've heard on the news every time we turn on the TV, talking about, did the DOT do a good job? Did they not do a good job? Did the local community services, did plants do a good job? Who did a good job? Well, it was all around roads and transportation. Did you ever think about your power? Did you ever think about your electricity during that time? In the Georgia Power consumers, over 2 million consumers of Georgia Power. At one time, we had 40,000 outages. Out of those 40,000 outages, 98% of them were back in service within less than 2 hours. There were a few outages that were longer than 2 hours, 6 to 8 hours in there, but very few. Why? Because maintenance, what had been done, how you prepare for it, the power company was prepared for it. They had over 1,000 linemen in the metropolitan area, in the northeast Georgia area to take care of this situation, out of South Georgia, out of there, other facilities, and even private contractors. Atlanta, what if we'd had a power outage in Atlanta that weekend? There was over 90,000 people going to a football game called the Falcons and the Green Bay Packers. There was over 90,000 people attending the Merchandise Mart show. There was the boat show taking place. The Atlanta Hawks were playing on Saturday night that same weekend. The hotels were jam-packed. The restaurants were jam-packed. The economic impact with the loss of electricity like we've seen experienced in California and in the Iron Belt up in the Northeast did not exist in the state of Georgia. We just sometimes take it for granted and forget really the benefits that we do have. Now, the final approval statement that the Commission came up with in our stipulated agreement with the power company is this. Under the traditional base rates that we were talking about in 2011, power company had asked for $451 million. They were awarded $347 million. And I could go through the 2012 and 2013, but basically over the all period of time, in what the agreement between the Public Service Commission and the Georgia Power Company was reducing their request by over $300 million. And again, I go back again, that $300 million came out of the other half, not the environmental side of it. There was no reductions in the environmental side because we had no control over that and they had no control over that. Additional commission action, the Georgia Power proposal rejected in the commission's order was the adjustable cost recovery tab that I talked about in the 07 tab. This would have resulted in a semi-annual review with no specific dates to that end. We rejected that. We replaced by a full case rate. In other words, we require the company to come back to us in 2013 to see where they are and what's happened in the process over this period of time. And a separate capacity cost of the recovery of the tariff. Now let me address for a second return on equity. Return on equity is the investment earnings for the company's equity investors. Those are the people, which includes the dividends of the company and the sharing of the appreciation of the company. A fair rate of return is needed in order to maintain stability in the financial world with the company. We enjoy a A-rated bond. If you had a downgrade of those bonds, as we've seen in Florida, one downgrade is equal to about $100 million. And when you have the capital cost to do projects in Georgia to expand, as Georgia has grown over 1 million people in the last 10 years, a lot of it's been in this area of the state, which we're going to have another congressional seat in Washington because of the growth. This growth requires people consuming electricity. This growth requires more transmission. It requires upgrading transformers in areas where more power is required. Thinking about that for a second, a fair rate of return is needed to attract investors. Those in the world that would through the investment houses, Standard & Poor's, Moody, Barclays, and others, to make those investments and in order to receive the best interest rates that we can have. ROE is a cost of doing business. And yes, the Georgia Power Company pays dividends quarterly. A lot of people are retired on those dividends and everything. But it remains a company, and then part of those investments are reinvested by the company into the things that I discussed earlier in order to keep the program going. The return on equity, the power company had asked for 11.95% of return on their equity. The stipulated agreement was at 11.15% of the earnings there. And in reducing the request of the ROE, of course, it lowered the revenue by over $100 million just in that reduction alone. Then I move into what can be the nuclear construction work in progress rate base. The Georgia House of Representatives passed the CWIP. It's a little addition. Basically what it does, ladies and gentlemen, is that we're paying the interest on the money that's being borrowed in advance. And then the next 5 years, we, the consumers, will save additionally well over $300 million rather than having all that lumped in and coming online at the same time. Now, we are a lot of seniors in this room, and I say we because I'm included in that. I'm 72 years young. And you know, but if I live 5 years, I'll benefit by that. But if I expire before the 5 years is up, I won't benefit from that. And that's just the reality. We're making a prepayment on tomorrow's future. Someone asked me about CWIP, and I said, well, you know, the best way I can explain it, and I served in the Air Force, but I said, you know, those men and women that served in World War I and World War II, they didn't fight that day for freedom that day. They fought for the freedom that we enjoy today. And my goal as a member of the Georgia Public Service Commission is that I've got 3 grandchildren. And I hope that 10 years from now, the oldest now is 8 years old, I hope that 10 or 15 years from now, down the road, as they study and as they look and they become productive in life, I hope they look back and say, you know, my grandfather was chairman of the Public Service Commission in 2010. And look what we've got today because of the leadership maybe that he projected at that time. Politically, hey, I could have voted no. Politically, I could have voted no. I knew that would be the best political vote. Hey, I'm a consumer just like everybody else. And I've heard the pleas and the cries, and I've seen the economy and what it's meant to. I'm a businessman too. I've got 2 businesses that my son runs. And we're a consumer of significant power. And this increase has gone significantly in each one of those businesses in excess of $200 to $300 a month. That hits the pocketbook. It really does. But again, you can't build a generation system overnight. You can't just do things like that at the spur of the moment. You've got to make plans. You've got to lead. You've got to make decisions. You have the best information that you can have in front of you. You got to see what's happening tomorrow. I was talking with Don Coate this morning at the Eggs and Issues breakfast in Atlanta with the governor, the lieutenant governor, and the Speaker of the House. Don, we were talking about the issues. He runs the Dalton power system up there. And Don was telling me, he said, well, you know, Bubba said, you know, if we just stopped and looked and we started talking about some particular numbers, Plant Sherrill is an old coal plant in Georgia, down near Macon, Georgia. One of the big producers down there of generation. Cost about $3.2 billion to build that plant. No, it was $2.2 billion to build that plant. And the environmental side of it came back just a few years back, and we spent, Georgia Power spent $2.7 billion just putting in scrubbers and back bags to upgrade that plant. It takes 135 megawatts of electricity just to run that new system that they put in there. It's less than a 500 megawatt system of generation. So you can see the significance just to run that particular plant. The City of Dalton Utilities uses about 470 megawatts of electricity to run all the carpet industry and everything that's in that Dalton area. And it takes 135 megawatts of electricity just to run the environmental system that's happening down there in Plant Sherrill. $2.7 billion just to retrofit it, to bring it up to the EPA standards, and it only costs $2.2 billion to build it from its inside. We still have 60% generation capacity of coal in our state. We're at 60%. We have 1% hydro. We have our nuclear plants that are about 20% of our generation, and our coal-fired systems and our combined cycle natural gas systems are about. You saw an increase last couple of years in the fuel costs. Natural gas was bumping $8 to $10 whatever the term they use to measure natural gas with. Now it's around and staying in about the $4 category. We're going to be advantaged by that in time because, again, converting these old coal systems into combined cycle natural gas units, and then when our nuclear plants come online. Some of the consumer assistance programs, we have Project Share, the Salvation Army continuing to emergency assistance program in there. Customer donations on your Georgia Power bill. You can add $1 a month to your Georgia Power bill for consumer assistance, and Georgia Power will match that dollar. Collection agreements. We offer the power company through schedules with the Public Service Commission, payment schedules for customers that are experiencing hardship situations. Remember, even with that though, there is no free electricity. Somebody's paying for it. There is no free electricity. Energy assistance programs provide information concerning programs to assist customers with past due bills. I've gotten behind my hauling sometime, and maybe you have too, and you try to work through and work with people to make that happen. You're going to have people that will even try to abuse that program. When they abuse the program, you and I have to pay for it. There is no free electricity. And then, of course, senior citizens that have limited income, they can get up to $20 a month in assistance on that. Ladies and gentlemen, that kind of wraps up a lot of numbers, a lot of information probably that it may be more information than you need. But anyway, those are the issues that that come across my desk that I have to deal with. And again, it's not just basing it on what's best today, it's what's best down the road. It's not based on what's best for me, because what's best for me would have been to say no, not going to do it. But I promise you this, when summer comes around and we get to August and September and the heat bills, I mean the heat goes up and everything, we're not going to experience what they experience in the states of California and the Northeast. We've got the generation capacity, we got the reserves to do it with, and I hope that we have the consumers that understand and are willing to step forth and understand what it's about and appreciate what we're having. Mr. President, that's about it, sir, and I'm open for any questions. Yes, sir.
One question, how much electricity does Georgia Power buy from local, like for instance the city of Cartersville and other local distributors?
How much do they buy from?
You don't buy any at all?
No, sir. Cartersville doesn't produce electricity.
For Georgia Power, because I know I come from upstate, and our state, our town sells power to New England Power.
They must have some kind of generation capacity.
Yeah, they do. They have a dam.
We don't have it here. Now, what we have going on, in fact, I was just in Barnesville, Georgia, just 2 weeks ago. We turned the dirt on a new $210 million biomass plant that's going in down there. And what they will do in this biomass plant is they will take the cuttings of trees in Atlanta and the surrounding area, the rubbish that's hauled off to landfills, the construction rubbish that goes on, and they'll make that and they'll turn that into electricity using the biomass, which will have a very, very low carbon footprint on it, and the power company will buy that power from them. It's called what we call an IPP, an independent power producer, and we have those in the state. I'll be meeting with a group from Ireland Friday of this week that are interested in coming to Georgia and look at that. We've got a plant in Plant Mitchell in Albany, Georgia, that's a coal-fired plant that's in the process that we will convert that to a biomass plant rather than coal. And so we're making those headways. We're making headway in solar. And there's people that can buy blocks of green solar power. You look at it and you say, the sun is free, let's enjoy it. But you probably saw in the news just recently that in the Obama administration 2 years ago, that they out of the program where they boosting the economy, there was a company up there that got $58 million to produce solar arrays of panels. Well, they've closed now, and we the taxpayers lost that $58 million. We've got some good independent producers, private companies that are doing solar, but solar's a lot more expensive than the generation of nuclear and combined cycle. Yes, sir.
I always thought that public utilities are guaranteed a 7% profit.
Public utilities.
Economics in college.
Public utilities guaranteed
A 7% profit.
I don't know anywhere that there's any type of guarantee. I know that under the law of the Public Service Commission, that we have a fiduciary responsibility to the companies that we regulate, as well as we have a responsibility to the consumers, making sure that they get the cheapest and the most reliable energy source that they can have. And that's in the law, and that's mandated to us when we say I will, and I do. Yes, sir.
How far away are those nuclear power plants in real time?
You mean as far as coming online? Late 15, early 16 on Unit 3, and late 16, early 17, Unit 4.
And their location is where?
In Waynesboro, out of Waynesboro in Burke County. They are on the same footprint as Plant Vogel 1 and 2 units. It's amazing, ladies and gentlemen. I was down there 3 weeks ago on site of the construction project down there, the nuclear plant, and it's amazing what it takes to do that. There are 1,500 construction workers down there. 80% of them are local, from the Savannah, Augusta, Waynesboro, Burke County area that in there, had to go down 90 feet below the surface to get to the bedrock, and then start coming back with 12 inches of dirt that's recognized and sifted and cleaned and everything, compacted down to 3 inches and build that 90 feet back up to the line. We are in a unique position because over in Aiken, South Carolina, where they're closing that plant over there, the atomic plant over there, and we're being able to capture some of the scientists and the technical people that with years of experience, and the Savannah River plant, and so that's going to be a great asset to us because those people don't want to relocate in some other areas, and so that's an advantage to our technical system that we were able to capture that talent information there. Georgia will be the first state in 34 years to come back with 2 new nuclear operations. Scana Energy in South Carolina is about a year behind us, and they'll be the others. I was in New York at the request of Wall Street people sitting down. There were about 15 commissioners from the state of Georgia, across the nation. Over there, and what these investors do, they sit and they ask us questions over a 2-day period of time, getting our philosophy so that they will know how to possibly express to their investors the reliability of maybe investing in the Southern Company or the Georgia Power Company or Pennsylvania Power Company or whatever. And one of the guys, and I think he was from Standard & Poor's, looked down the table and he pointed at me and he said, "I don't know what kind of crystal ball Georgia has, but Georgia is leading this nation in energy production. And we still, even with this rate increase in Georgia, we will still be 10% in our energy cost below the national average in the cost of electricity." I talked to my colleagues in California, and they sit there and shake their heads. They said, "We're so far behind. If we had the generation, we don't have the transmission to deliver." And that's why industry is leaving California in droves and coming to places like Georgia, North Carolina, and other places like that. It's fine. It's fine. It's not exciting as maybe other things might be, but it's challenging. And again, hopefully grandchildren appreciate it. Yes, Fred.
I had 2 things. Thanks again for being here today. I really appreciate it. One thing I continuously hear from critics, I guess you could say, regarding this is the way it was presented. I don't know if the Public Service Commission did it or the media, but the implication, although if you read the fine print, you could look at the percentage and figure it out. But I even noticed you even brought it up that this was going to be somewhere in the cost of $10 extra a month. What's misleading about that is that's per $100.
No.
Is that not true?
No, that's basically dealing with the average consumer uses a little over 1,000 megawatts a month in consumption of electricity.
But generally, if I spend $100 a month, that was what was implied. It would be about $10.
That's correct.
A month.
That's correct. And if you
But
spend,
most of us around here would normally be spending $200 or $300 a month, so you're actually looking at $20 to $30 more on your monthly electric bill.
it's about 10% of your per kilowatt cost.
Right. And the other thing that I wanted to bring up is it would appear to me that Georgia Power, and I know you'll correct me, and that's what I want you to do, did they not budget for this? I mean, they knew this was going to come up. It wasn't like the feds all of a sudden came in and said, "Hey, all of a sudden, you need to do this."
Budget for this thing, what is this?
Well, for the increase that we're paying for all the upgrades that are required.
Oh, yeah.
It seems like, to me, it almost appears like, well, we're not going to do anything in budget for it. We'll just wait until then we'll push our increase.
Well, the Georgia Power can budget for it, but they can't do anything unless the commission approves it.
Right.
So they have to budget, and then they bring their budgets in the form of a rate case and whatever. And if they over-earn that 11.15%, the company will get 1/3 of it. You and I will get 1/3 of it, and 1/3 of it, the other 1/3 of it will go to accelerated depreciation, which you and I will be the recipients of.
Yeah, but, you know, you also know as well that they can also look at, we can spend the money here instead of, oh, we have all this money left over. I would have preferred to have seen like, all right, we know this is coming up. If we don't get the increase, we need to plan for it and save away, whereas it looks more on the order of, we're just waiting until we get there, we have to have it, and then they're almost force you into voting in such an increase.
Well, it doesn't force, the word force, Fred, is...
Maybe
is
not force, but, you know, you're doing the right thing.
Well, here's the process. What if in the world of law that we live in, if the Georgia Power Company is not happy with this settlement or this agreement that they had, they will appeal it. Where do they appeal it to? Fulton County Superior Court. Then a judge will review and make a decision. Is the ROE correct? Is the tariff adjustment correct? We don't want to go there. We don't want to go there because you and I wouldn't be as well off as you are today, I promise you. The other side of it is that we could do without this for a period of time. The power company's bond rating would go down BBB, BB. In the end, the consumer's going to pay. It's going to come in because the capital cost is going to go up, up, up. But going back to, do you budget for the environmental side of it? I could show you a chart that shows 32 different environmental issues that are hanging before the EPA, not Congress, but EPA, the power of EPA, Environmental Protection Division. And that's why that I think November the 12th of 2010 is going to make a significant difference in that regard, because we would have to deal with mandates that basically, when you take a coal-fired system and you spend $2 billion on scrubbers and you reduce the carbon footprint by that much, we were looking at a vessel and this was the carbon, we reduced it by that much. Then EPA comes back a little bit later and says that's not enough. So we're going to reduce it this much more. That much more is going to cost you $4.6 billion. This costs you $2.7 billion to reduce it here, but to reduce it that much more is going to cost you $4.6 billion. You can't win. It's just, and again, they don't identify nuclear as a renewable energy source in the cap and trade legislation. And we disagree. We think it ought to be in there because it produces no carbon. Once it's in there. When I was at Plant Vogel 2 weeks ago, I looked at the production on units 1 and 2. One of them was running at 99.6% of capacity. One of them was running at 99.4% of capacity. 100% is the best they could do if everything just was going just perfectly. Those two plants down there, according to the superintendent on that job down there, says we're producing in these plants the cheapest electricity of any nuclear plant in the nation there in the state of Georgia. Yes, sir.
Will Georgia switch more of their coal-fired generating plants to natural gas as we go down the road?
Yes.
And it's all EPA related?
Well, it's not all EPA related. When you build any kind of plant, you build a nuclear plant, it has a life expectancy. And of course, you're looking down the road, you look at the present administration is anti-coal, period. And then now, because of technology and everything, the shale gas has come into play, has caused the supply and demand, same old theory that we've been living by all of our lives. Supply and demand, shale gas has caused the price of natural gas to significantly fall, over 100% over the last 3 years. And we have identified just right now over 100 years of supply of natural gas in this nation, and that's good for us.
At these lower prices for natural gas, is it more cost efficient now than coal generated electricity?
Well,
If you exclude the capital requirements
Well,
for,
okay.
if you exclude the capital requirements for the new scrubbers and so
Okay.
forth.
If you include that, but if you exclude the capital just to build the system itself.
Yeah.
The fuel cost is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
The fuel cost is equal and getting cheaper.
Equal to
gas.
coal,
Equal to coal and getting cheaper.
at the current natural gas
Yes,
prices.
sir.
Yeah.
Of course, the other side of it is we still have an abundance of coal in this
Right.
nation. And so as the demand goes down for coal, what's going to happen? The price is going to go down. So it's going to be competing in that same environment. Yes, sir.
Commissioner, we have a coal-fired plant here in Bartow County,
Yes,
Plant
sir.
Boyd, which is one of the biggest. And I know you mentioned about the EPA requirements, but the Georgia Power folks at Plant Boyd have with pride, though they spent $1 billion to put the scrubbers in there, that they've been able to virtually eliminate sulfur dioxide from going into the atmosphere. So I just wanted to point out that they are.
These are two model plants up here.
Right, and they were required to do it by EPA, but they're taking pride in the fact that
Absolutely.
they're able to do that.
Absolutely. And I don't know what the life cycle is of those plants, but it goes back, all these plants have a life cycle. Even our nuclear plants do.
And sulfur dioxide is the acid right.
Well, it's been a pleasure to be with you today. And again, this is America. And I'll end it with this. While the storm clouds gathered far across the sea, let us pledge allegiance to this land that's free. Let us all be grateful to a land so fair as we lift our voices in a solemn prayer. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home sweet home. God bless America, my home sweet home. Thank you very much.
Great job. I tell you one thing, Commissioner Brown and Commissioner McDonald, I sure know one thing. When you reach over and you flip that switch, light comes on. It's a good feeling. Talk about when we had that cold weather a couple weeks ago. It's nice not to have your power go off. It's nice to be warm when you want to be warm and cool when you want to be cool.